The new season of the Repco Supercars Championship is upon us. By the time you're watching this, the thrifty Bathurst 500 is mere days away, probably a day away. And it follows last weekend's Bathurst Superfest and 12-hour enduro race. Congratulations to Matt Campbell of Manthe Ima Racing Team. With all this in mind, I thought it would be appropriate to open the year, the season, and the channel with a guide to the 2024 Supercars season. So, for those of you who don't know, the Supercars Championship is a stock car, technically touring race category operating in the Australian region, namely Australia and New Zealand. It is formerly known as the V8 Supercars and is an FIA-sanctioned event. If you're a petrol head in Australia like I am, then you've definitely been affected by this series in some capacity. It is the golden child of Australian motorsport and has been home to some of the greatest racing and manufacturer rivalries ever worldwide. Walk into your average rural or suburban pub and you're bound to see a bloke who's old enough to be your dad's dad, sporting a full Ford or Holden getup. For those in the international audience, Supercars may be seen as that one sporting group before the F1 Australian Grand Prix, or the championship that one Australian, or technically New Zealand NASCAR guy came from. For those in the esports space, Supercars is currently a C-Class racing series on iRacing, one in which real Supercars teams do enter competitively. If all this interests you, stick around and subscribe, as I'm working on a Supercars history/introduction video, which should be a great introduction for those not familiar with the category, but with budget Bathurst on the horizon, and because I am slack, this video will be coming out first. Now let's get into the meat of it. By the way, for a flow reason, I might refer to the series as Supercars or V8s or V8 Supercars. Just know I'm referring to the same thing. I've been a fan since I was a wee kid, so V8 Supercars lives rent-free in my mind and rolls off the tongue. Let's go. So, the grid. For the cars, the 2023 Supercars Championship was the first season to feature the new Gen 3 cars, and the first year to see GM enter their car as the Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, following Holden's withdrawal the year prior, much to the dismay of fans in this country. Ford also released its new Gen 3 Mustang design, being modelled after the 7th generation Mustang GT, and was the 5th year since Ford rejoined the category after its departure in 2015 with the Ford Falcon. Rest in peace. The 2023 cars continue on to this year, as both the fans and the series hope to leave the parity and homologation issues of the previous season behind. I fucking hate that word. The 2023 cars continue this year, as both the fans and the series hope to leave the parity and homologation issues of the previous season behind. And I hope so too, because I don't know what cars will be racing if Ford gets the shits and leaves and the GM contract ends at the same time. But hey, that's for another video. However, if you know the series just well enough, I bet you that these issues will continue in some form, which is understandable to a degree, as we're still in the teething stage of Gen 3, but you'd hope it'd be their first priority to fix it. But anyway, parity. Supercars is known as a parity series, where the homologation teams, Ford, GM, and Supercars work together not only during the off-season but throughout the season as they race to ensure that the Ford and the Chevrolet are on an equal playing field. The idea with this being that it leaves the season performance down to individuals driving, strategies, the pit crew, and the overall teams. With this in mind, let's go over some of the changes over the off-season that hopefully bring the two cars closer together. So, Camaro-based teams will be running a 5.7 litre V8 engine. It's a single camshaft engine, 2 valves per cylinder. In contrast, Ford teams are on a 5.4 litre quad cam V8, 4 valves per cylinder. This is most commonly referred to as the Coyote engine. It is the one that you see in the current production of the GT Mustang. Dick Johnson Racing is the engine homologation team for Ford, and 888 Engineering homologate the Camaro. Both teams have been working to have each engine reach parity, with, quote, dynamometer testing by Supercars engine expert Craig Hasted is said to show parity based on the category's established metrics of AEP. For those of you who don't know, AEP is accumulated engine power and is the sum of the power generated at specified points in the rev range, pretty much making sure that none of the engines exceed this metric and have an advantage. Speed Cafe reported about that testing. So even though the AEP has been signed off on parity, the shift cut deltas and further engine metrics are still being tested. DJR and 888 Supercars hit the track featuring torque sensors, pitot, and laser ride height sensors at the Bathurst 12-hour last weekend in a test run, and is reported that the further dynamometer testing will occur after the season opener in Bathurst again to ensure that DJR clarity is at parity. So aero, this is the biggest change of the off-season. In contrast to the engine, Supercars has declared that the Camaro and Mustang have reached aero parity. This was after 2 rounds of aero testing in the United States, during which the Camaro took on a deck lid boot spoiler, one that the Ford already had, along with adjustments to the rear wing and an extended splitter edge. The Mustang, on the other hand, got some chubby cheeks on its front bar. Here's a picture, along with an adjusted deck lid. Hopefully these changes will bridge the gap in aero that affected the Ford teams last season and caused much controversy. Shift cuts are essentially the time in which the engine is not sending drive to the rear wheels during an up or down shift. Supercars use a sequential shifter that features a shift cut where the driver doesn't have to come off the accelerator, foot flat on the floor, and as the car will automatically cut the power coming from the engine for, we're talking fractions of a second, mere milliseconds, in order for the gearbox to shift. The time in which this cut occurs is known as the shift cut delta, and Supercars use that timing as a sort of a band-aid fix, as it's referred to in the media, to bridge gaps between the two engines. This was used a lot last year and is reported to have temporary shift cut adjustments in place this coming opening weekend, while engine parity is still being completed. Ford was at a clear disadvantage all of last season in regards to engine and aero. This caused controversy within teams, within the drivers, and Ford, the manufacturer themselves, against Supercars. At one point, Ford vaguely and lightly implied that they would leave the category if parity isn't sorted out. Along with this, the big boss of global Ford performance, Mark Rushbrook, will be in attendance this weekend at the opener along with the Australian division bosses. This looming scrutiny should be enough motivation for Supercars to reach engine parity sooner rather than later. Let's move on past that boring nerd stuff. By the way, video incoming next couple of weeks / month explaining parity and homologation and the controversies of last season. I've got so many ideas for videos with this channel where I'm sharing my love for the category, so I've got to try not to go on tangents in this matter-of-factual video and save it for later, you know? Anywho, now it's time for the teams. All the teams are unsurprisingly returning from last year with the same car manufacturer. However, there have been some surprising driver changes. So, starting with Erebus, no further comments, save it for a bit later. Erebus is entering 2 Camaros this season. Jack LeBrock is replacing Will Brown and is driving the number 9 Camaro after he moved from MSR. Todd Hazelwood is racing in the second Erebus car with a to-be-announced number. This is only confirmed for the season opener. It's not known if he'll be racing in later events. However, this is a move from his placement at BRT last season. 888 Race Engineering, commonly known as Red Bull Ampol Racing. 888 is entering 2 Camaros this season. Replacing Shane Van Gisbergen is a tall task. However, 888 has taken Will Brown from Erebus and is placing him in the number 88 car this season. Brock Feeney returns in the number 87 car. Brad Jones Racing, now known as R&J Batteries and Middies Racing for one team, and SCT Motorsport and Pizza Hut Racing for the second team. So BGI is entering 4 Camaros this season. Andre Heimgartner enters in the number 8 and Bryce Fullwood in the number 14 for R&J Batteries and Middies Racing, while Macaulay Jones bearing the 96 and Jackson Evans sporting the number 12, replacing Jack Smith, are racing for SCT Motorsport and Pizza Hut Racing. Tickford Racing, commonly known as Monster Castrol Racing, is entering 2 Mustangs this season, a contrast to the 4 that they entered last season. Cam Waters returns in the number 6 Monster car, and Thomas Randall bears the number 55 in the Castrol car. Dick Johnson Racing, or commonly known as Shell V-Power Racing Team, DJR is entering 2 Mustangs this season. They are one of 2 teams who are starting the season with the same lineup. Anton Di Pasquale races in number 11 and Will Davison in the number 17. Wilkinshaw and Andretti United are commonly known as Mobile One Truck Assist and Mobile One Optus Racing. Wilkinshaw is entering 2 Mustangs this season. Chaz Mostert returns in the number 25 Optus car, while Ryan Wood, a 2024 season rookie, starts in the number 2 Truck Assist car, replacing Nick Percat. Ryan Wood finished 3rd last season in the Super 2 Development Series with 5 race wins, so he's one to watch this season. Grove Racing, commonly known as Penrite Racing. Grove is entering 2 Mustangs this season. Matt Payne returns the number 19 car, while Richie Stanaway, a returning Supercars driver from way back in 2016, replaces David Reynolds in the 26 car. Team 18, commonly known as DeWalt and Tradie Beer Racing. Team 18 is entering 2 Camaros this season. Mark Winterbottom, Frosty, is returning in the redesigned DeWalt car as number 18, and David Reynolds, after leaving Grove, picks up the Tradie Beer number 20 seat. Premier Racing, more commonly known as Premier Newland Racing. Premier is entering 2 Camaros this season. Premier is the second and final team to remain unchanged entering Bathurst this season. DJR and Premier are bringing a breath of stability after a tumultuous off-season for the category. Tim Slade is racing under number 23, and James Golding number 31. Matt Stone Racing, commonly known as Tyre Power and Bendix Racing. MSR is entering 2 Camaros this season. Cameron Hill returns the number 4 car, while Nick Percat joins in the number 10 car, replacing LeBrock after his exit from Wilkinshaw. Blanchard Racing Team, commonly known as Cool Drive and Snowy River Racing. BRT is in a complete shake-up entering this season, as they're entering a second Mustang as part of their expansion plan. Along with that, Todd Hazelwood has been replaced by rookie Aaron Love in the number 3 Cool Drive car, while James Courtney, having joined BRT as a refugee from Tickford, cutting their entered cars in half, will drive the number 7 Snowy River car. What a shake-up. Crazy off-season. Some old names, familiar ones, some new names. Now, before we dive into the off-season controversy, let's discuss tracks and events for this year. This part of the video will pretty much be an abridged and categorized from the Supercars official news post discussing the 2024 calendar. I find this news post absolutely amazing and a good read. While Supercars does lay it on a bit thick at the end with advertising all the anniversaries and quote-unquote milestones, especially in its quotes from the CEO, it actually does a decent job in highlighting the changes this season, and I'll link it down below. Here we go. This season we have 12 races, no surprise there, running between February and November, nothing new. I'll show the dates and whether or not the Super 2s and 3s will be running on each title card, but it won't be mentioned aloud in the segment. The season opener, the big boy, the crown of the... Oh wait, no, this isn't Bathurst. It's in Bathurst, but it's not Bathurst. The Bathurst 500 is occurring as a part of the designated Superfest, a 2-week-long celebration of motorsport that begins with the Bathurst 12-hour and ends with Bathurst 500. Pretty cool idea if you ask me. In making a community event, Supercars has capitalized on the fact that the season opener does in fact usually fall pretty close to the yearly Bathurst 12-hour, which they also own and operate. Why is it opening here and not Newcastle? Well, the entire story deserves its own video, but pretty much Newcastle had enough of Supercars and pulled out, essentially, leaving the category without its opening race. Seemingly left with not much options, they decided to hold the opener at Bathurst, while leaving the iconic actual Bathurst in its regular slot later in the season. Controversies surrounding this will be discussed a bit later, but for now, let's just accept that it happened and move on. As you can guess by the name, this race is 500 kilometers long and is a 2-race round format, one on Saturday, one on Sunday. This is one of the 4 race formats we'll see this season. The change of the host race 1 is the first of 2 tracks to not carry over from the 2023 calendar. Event number 2, Melbourne Super Sprint. Carrying over from last season, the Melbourne Super Sprint occurs during the Formula 1 Australian Grand Prix as a supporting act. The race is considered a Super Sprint format, one of the other 4 formats used in the season. This season's Super Sprints are, as quoted from Supercars' new look time-allotted races. These races are 60 minutes long. In the case of Melbourne, there'll be 4 races across the entire weekend as a result of the special circumstances. Event 3, ITM Taupo Super 400. Pushing Perth from race 3 to race 4 comes the ITM Taupo Super 400, an international race in Taupo, New Zealand. The last time we raced in New Zealand was Auckland in 2022, and the series returns, but this time to Taupo, a small town in the North Island south of Hamilton. The race debuts the new Super 400 format, which will feature here at Taupo, as well as later in the season in Sydney. The Super 400 format features 2 races of 200 kilometers each. 200 times 2 equals 400, I guess. So the only difference between a Super 400 race and a 2-race round format is the distance being much shorter. An entire weekend in New Zealand and Sydney are now shorter than a single race in towns like Adelaide, Sandown, so forth, or your 500 kilometer races. Do with that what you will. While a fair technical distinction, in my opinion, isn't smart to increase the amount of formats in a category that is currently trying to grow its audience, but I concur. Perth returns from last season in the same super sprint format. 2 races, 1 each weekend day, 1 hour length each. Not much to say here, but it's always good to see these races continue on over the calendar, especially for local fans. It's great for the sport to have recurring races. Event number 5, the better Darwin Triple Crown. Tasmania has been moved later in the calendar, bringing Darwin up 1 slot in the year. A special milestone for Darwin, as this is the 75th race at the circuit. Darwin is also the yearly official Indigenous round. For those of you outside Australia, this is common practice across our local sporting leagues, including in motorsport. Not much has been released other than dates, but Supercars has indicated that Darwin is a super sprint round. Based on previous years, the quote-unquote Triple Crown part of the name will come from the top 10 shootout and 2 super sprints. For those of you unaware, Darwin used to hold 3 full races in the good old days, but under the new Supercars format, it only bears a quote-unquote Triple Crown in its name. Event number 6, the NTI Townsville 500. 1 race earlier than usual, thanks to Tasmania, but still falling around the same time. My home race, let's go baby, Townsville's 15th year of racing, and will hold its 40th start. Townsville is part of a small but elite group of 3 remaining street races on the calendar, thanks to Newcastle fucking North. The Townsville 500 is a 2-race round with 2 500-kilometer races, 1 on each weekend day. There will definitely be a special video for this race, as of this time, it'll be the only race I'm attending in person this year. Not much else to add here without risking me going on a rant about the Townsville race. It deserves its own video, but carrying on. Event number 7, Bo Repairs Sydney Super Night. Don't let the name fool you. Super Night is not another racing format. It just has a special name, as the race at the Sydney Motorsport Park is the only race that occurs during the night time fully. In reality, the Sydney race is a Super 400 race alongside Taupo. Nothing else new here but the format change. Event number 8, Ned Whiskey Tasmania Super Sprint. The 55th anniversary of racing in Tasmania is this year at yet another Super Sprint race. Not much else to add other than the race changing from one half of the year to the other in order to replace the OTR Super Sprint at the iconic Bend, the second track missing from this calendar. Supercars say that this race will return next year as an endurance race. Event number 9, Penrite Oil Sandown 500. The first endurance race of the calendar, marking the final of 4 formats that are being used this season. The Sandown 500 this year marks the 60th anniversary, and Supercars says there'll be huge celebrations. The Sandown 500 will feature co-drivers for each car, as is common with enduro races, and personally I'm excited to see what kind of extra events will take place over that weekend to celebrate motorsports. Event 10, Bathurst 1000, the second and last endurance race of the year, occurring as usual after Sandown in its regular early October time slot, the Bathurst 1000. This is the most iconic race of the year and will be one to remember, as is usual. Event number 11, Bruce Mobile Gold Coast 500. Apparently it's been 30 years since the Supercars first hit the streets of Surfers Paradise. It's pretty cool. The second and last race in Queensland, and the second of 3 street circuits on the calendar. There is some controversy around this event, which will be discussed in a bit. However, as always, it is a pretty cool event and should be a great race for the spectators there. Event 12, Valo Adelaide 500. The final race of the season, the final street race, and the final 2-race round. Adelaide 500. Celebrating 25 years, this is a fan favourite race, and same with Sandown, should hold a lot of celebrations due to the significant milestone. We are 7 pages deep in my notes document at the moment, and we're still not done. This is going to be a long video, but it's necessary for the start of such a big season like this one. Now that you know the state of the car, the grid, and the calendar, let's discuss some of the off-season controversies so you can get through a conversation with the average Supercars fan during this race weekend. This is going to kind of attempting to be a lightning round, as each of these could serve itself as its own video. I implore you to do some of your own reading if any of these interest you, but I promise if it deserves longer form video, it will get a longer form video. Brodie and Erebus. The biggest event of the off-season, one of which kind of happened towards the end of it. Things are still developing and is far from over, keep that in mind, which is kind of beneficial for me as I can start writing a video while it still unfolds. But let's just discuss where we are as of the season opener. All this information is correct as of 21st of February. So the saga begins in the last 48 hours of January as Speed Cafe reported on the 30th that there are rumors that are swirling that there was a problem between Brodie Kostecki, the 2023 Supercars champion, and Erebus, his championship team, which some of you may know as the Coca-Cola team. Speed Cafe then states that they have confirmed he's leaving the team. The next day, the 31st, Erebus responds stating that it is in fact untrue that Brodie has left the team, and in fact, Brodie Kostecki remains part of the Erebus Motorsport family. However, they then state that Brodie has indicated he's not in a position to take part in the opening round of the 2024 Supercars Championship. Okay, so he's part of the team, but he just can't race in the first race. Okay, that's fine, whatever. Then, Supercars CEO Shane Howard puts out this statement, and I'm going to read it in full so you can understand the same context in which I read it in. We understand the gravity of Brodie's decision and the challenges he may be facing at this time. On behalf of everyone at Supercars, we wish Brodie all the best, and we sincerely hope to witness his return to the Repco Supercars Championship in the future. In the meantime, we extend our support to Erebus as they navigate the start of the 2024 Repco Supercars Championship with Todd Hazelwood and Jack LeBrock driving for the team. Defending a championship title is never an easy task. We're confident in Erebus' ability to adapt and continue their pursuit of success on the track. What? Does that not sound like Brodie's no longer racing, not only for Erebus, but in the championship as a whole? Like, is that not in direct contrast to Erebus' team statement? No. By February the 2nd, Shaw & Partners Financial Services, one of the biggest sponsors of the team, with their name being plastered all over the cars, announced that they'll no longer be sponsoring Erebus. The only statement given being, we have just decided to go our separate ways and wish them all the best for the future. We've had a great 4-year association with them, and we wish them the best. Pretty sus timing if you ask me, but it wasn't directly confirmed that it was related. During the same time, the fallout from this situation begins to hit the wider sport as Boost Mobile pauses negotiations on their contract renewal for the Gold Coast 500 from 2025. This is because Boost Mobile is a big supporter of Brodie. Peter Adderton, Boost founder, is vocal on social media, causing a stir, but also at the same time quelling rumors that Brodie is moving to NASCAR, something that will be further discussed in the big video about this drama. By the 5th of February, Coca-Cola pulls out. After careful consideration, Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners has made the difficult decision to end the company's partnership with Erebus Motorsport effective immediately. This decision only relates to our partnership with Erebus Motorsport and does not affect other existing agreements we have with the Australian Supercars Championship. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The same day, Southern Cross Truck Rentals pulls out. In talking about Brodie, the CEO of SCTR says, the contract is still binding, but the truth of the matter is, you know that they're not together, so it puts people in a hard situation. Confirming what everyone is already thinking. In a matter of a week, they've lost their 3 biggest sponsors and their winning driver. Supercars steps up once again, saying, the circumstances at hand are ultimately a matter between the owners and management of Erebus Motorsport and their contracted driver Brodie Kostecki, and that Supercars has offered our full support to all parties and will continue to do so. Fans aren't happy. By the 8th, people have spotted Erebus test cars sporting the number 1 on one of their cars, despite Brodie seemingly not being part of the team. The newly promoted Erebus team principal says, in a quote to Speed Cafe, it's all good. Yeah, it's as if nothing has changed for us there. We're all a real close-knit team, and with everything going on, everything thinks it's falling apart. But it's not. We're all laughing and having fun, and we're all working well together and having a great time. Oh my god. By this point, the news has hit mainstream. Everyone's talking about it. So many rumors and speculation. Brodie is seen for the first time in public at the Motorsport Awards. All he says on the matter is, it is no secret that I've come to crossroads with my 2023 Supercars team, and ongoing discussions mean that I cannot say any more on the matter at this time. I thank you for appreciating my position. That is some media-trained legal talk. Peter Addison steps up to the plate once again and says the next day on a podcast, this is being dragged through the mainstream media now, not just the motorsport media, the mainstream media. They need to shut this down, and they need to shut it down quickly. That is a sentiment that is being echoed by fans across the sport. Pretty much, people ended up in two sides of a camp. They would either believe that this is great publicity for the sport, any publicity is good publicity, or there are people who believed that it was bad publicity, it was bad for the sport, and to deal with it. Some people were even suggesting that Supercars should buy out the contract remaining so that they can be done with the drama and move on. The final nail in the coffin, Tickford Racing's new livery shows a Coca-Cola sponsorship on the back. Rough. And as of me writing this, that is all. I can go into so much more depth, and I will, just give it time, I don't want to jump the gun. On to the next controversy. As previously mentioned, Boost Mobile suspended talks on its renewal of the Gold Coast 500 pending the Brodie drama. No further developments have really been confirmed, but it would be detrimental to have such a big naming rights sponsor exit the sport. Speaking of exiting the sport, Newcastle. In late September last year, the Supercars and the New South Wales government expressed talks to continue the race in 2024. Supercars publicly stated they were in talks with the City Council. However, by October, the City Council wouldn't give the race the stamp of approval, and Natalie Nelms, something like that, the mayor, revealed that the event will no longer be going ahead in 2024. Womp womp. Supercars and seemingly the state government both expressed hopes that they will return to Newcastle in the following years. The state government was blaming the local council, and the local council says that over half of its residents surveyed, not all half the residents, but half the residents they surveyed, said that they didn't want the race to return. According to the ABC, who did a decent report on this subject, one anti-race campaigner, Christine Everingham, says that they don't want the race in the streets, but they would support it on a track. A semi-fair argument. As someone living in a town with a street race, I get that if you don't give a shit about the race, having the roads closed and barricades put up can be a pain in the ass, but whatever. Who cares? Another video. Ford, just want to touch on this briefly. This deserves its own video. It has been discussed very lightly in this video, but Ford continues to struggle with parity in the Mustang and the Camaro. Everyone seems to think it'll be sorted out this year. Hopefully it will be. Video on the parity wars coming soon. And an extra note on the Bathurst 500 season opener, there was discussions about whether or not holding two races at Bathurst in one season would get people tired of the race, would get people unenthusiastic of the race, would take away the prestige of returning to Bathurst every year. That is still being discussed to this day, and it is up to each person to decide whether or not they think it's good for the sport to race twice at the same track, albeit in different formats. So, that's that. Now you're up to speed to start the season. I wish I made an introduction to Supercars videos first, as this channel aims to bring new people into the sport. However, at the same time, I also aim to strengthen the current and previous fans of the category. As those are both priorities to the channel, it was hard to decide which video would come first, but thanks to procrastination and the highly technical aspect of a video explaining the rules of the entire category, this video was easiest to make first, and was time specific to the season starting. I tried to explain anything I thought a non-fan might not understand, especially in the parity section and with race formats. Hopefully you can follow along with me as the season starts until I can make a big introduction video to the sport. I aim to make videos about supercar stories, like ones mentioned in this video, weekend recaps to make an entire race weekend feel easier and digestible to someone who didn't watch the race, as well as rant videos and general discussion. Thank you for watching, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions, you want clarification, or you would like some sources about what I've discussed. Happy 2024.